All right, so our next speaker is no stranger to medical cannabis. David Hess is president and co-founder of Tress Capital, and as a two-time cancer survivor, David was introduced to the vast benefits of medical cannabis while undergoing cancer treatments in 2001 and again in 2003. David has since dedicated himself to furthering research, awareness, and business opportunities in the expanding cannabis industry. In 2013, David partnered with Asher Trophy to establish Tress Capital, the cannabis industry's go-to source for private capital, solutions, and strategic support. Tress Capital is a strategic private investment firm embedded at the core of the global cannabis sector, originating and managing investments for high net worth, family office, and institutional investors. Tress has a track record of successful industry investment and works closely with its companies and the industry, providing active value add support. With a unique industry network, unparalleled deal flow, and experienced team with in-house niche expertise, Tress Capital is the go-to for sophisticated investors seeking competence. Tress Solutions provides M&A advisory, strategy, business development, and operational support to sector companies. So welcome, David. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Jim, for the intro. Emily, that was fantastic. I'm a big fan of Poseidon. And thank you, Brad Turner, for producing another wonderful event today. And really, I'm looking forward to all the presentations and all the great opportunities we're going to see in a bit. As Jim mentioned, my name is David Hess. I am the president and co-founder of Tress Capital. Tress Capital is a strategic private investment firm. We are embedded at the core of the global cannabis sector. And what we do is we originate and manage investments for high net worth, family office, and institutional investors. We've been investing strictly in the cannabis industry for about a decade now. And as you mentioned, we do have a track record of successful industry investment and do work closely with most of our portfolio companies on a day-to-day basis and the industry as a whole, and really adding that active value add support. The Tress portfolio includes industry leaders such as Headset, Tilt by way of Baker Technologies, SC Labs, Cannabis Now, Grownetics, Northbud Farms, Infusion Biosciences, Waste Tracker, and ICANN. And as you mentioned, Jim, I am no stranger to medical cannabis, and today I'd like to share a little bit of my story. I was introduced to the vast benefits of medical cannabis while undergoing cancer treatments at Sloan Kettering in 2001 and again in 2003. But I'm originally from Los Angeles. I'm in New York now, but originally from Los Angeles, where I was actually gathering signatures, believe it or not, for Prop 215 as a part-time job during my senior year in high school. I mean, how cool is that, right? And then I had family and friends jump on the opportunity once it passed. Unfortunately for myself, I was diagnosed with synovial sarcoma in 2000. And so, although I did have a front row seat to the legacy cannabis industry, so to speak, I had to relocate to New York and participate on the sidelines for a bit. And the reason I went to New York is the oncologists at Sloan Kettering were the only oncologists that were giving me any opportunity at survival. And so off to New York I went. I was able to medicate with cannabis throughout my first bout with chemo and radiation. And really that kept my spirits up as well as my appetite. However, within 2 years, I had a local recurrence. And due to the treatments on the second bout with cancer, I had to spend the year as an inpatient in New York City at Sloan Kettering. And there I was 22. I was being treated on a pediatric floor for some of the medical professionals on the webinar today. They might understand that synovial sarcoma is traditionally seen amongst pediatrics. And so, as I mentioned, I'm on a pediatric floor as a 22-year-old. And, I had friends early on coming by, friends and families, since, as I mentioned, being from LA, there was absolutely no stigma for us. And they were sneaking me out of my room at Sloan Kettering, and taking me downstairs, and I had no problem medicating, traditionally with cannabis. The problem became about my second round in, I became bedridden and could no longer medicate with cannabis. I was miserable. I started to feel the chemo begin to kill me, and I wanted to quit. I was given an article. You had mentioned Marinol earlier. Well, I was given an article, I believe it was in Time magazine, on Marinol. And I remember almost defiantly handing it to my oncologist and said, here, give me a prescription for Marinol and I'll stick around. Otherwise, send me home and let me medicate with cannabis the traditional way and let me feel good as I make my exit. And believe it or not, this is Sloan Kettering, right? This is a major cancer hospital and research center. And this was the chairman of oncology at Sloan Kettering. That was my oncologist. And I was his first patient that he was prescribing Marinol to. And I remember within the first hour to 2 hours of me taking Marinol, within the first hour or two of me being prescribed Marinol, there I was laughing with my nurses, asking my friends to come watch Monday Night Football with me and making sure they bring the wings, right there. I wasn't eating for months. And there I was acting and feeling like my old self, watching movies and eating munchies and from a pill, right? And again, I had access to the legacy cannabis industry in California. And so, I understood what the cannabis laws were, but this was a major paradigm shift for me personally. And I wanted to understand all I could about medical cannabis, right? Again, I was 22 on a pediatric floor. My roommates at Sloan Kettering were 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. And, I'm watching football and movies, thank you, Cheech, right? I'm watching Cheech and Chong and I'm loving life. And there I was. I'm a cancer patient and my roommates were I can't even begin to reimagine what it was like at night there. It was really awful. And I wanted to learn as much as I could about cannabis. And could it help children, right? Or I wanted to learn everything I could and found out that there's actually an endocannabinoid system in each and every one of us. I found out about terpenes, THC, CBD, CBN, CBG, THC, THCA, and everything in between. And I learned that there were actually clinical trials in Israel going on since '96 with a government that was, being proactive in Israel towards medical cannabis. And again, I was absorbing every ounce of data and information that I could. I did have access to a lot of those practitioners in Israel and scientists studying it in Israel, and would call them on a weekly, monthly basis. And again, just try and learn as much as I could. Fast forward a bit to 2010, 6 medical licenses were awarded in New Jersey, right? And I still had to be in New York, which I am today, to be close to Sloan Kettering. But luckily for me, the cultivation manager was a friend, and he heard me talking about legitimizing the credibility of cannabis for years at that point, and calls me one day and says, Dave, this is your chance. And I jumped on it. There was a need for capital and operations, and I helped syndicate that deal. And once that project was off the ground, I started to hear about cannabis trade shows, right? This is back in 2011, 2012, when some of the trade shows were just getting off the ground, and really just joined every association I could that involved cannabis, and really started to grow with the nucleus of the industry. And after several of the trade shows and really building out my network beyond California and several diligence trips, I realized 2 things. I realized, number one, if I'm going to invest other people's money, aside from my own and my family's capital, that we had to, and especially if we're going to monitor these entrepreneurs and these opportunities and report back to the investors, I knew I had to bring in a partner with actual financial experience, a background from Wall Street. And my vision was that our firm would be as credible as any other investment firm for any other industry. And I also realized that there was an opportunity to support the infrastructure of this new industry, what we always called the legs of the cannabis industry. And so in 2013, I did just that. I partnered with Asher Trophy, an experienced fiduciary and trader on Wall Street, who was operating in equity and equity portfolios for over a decade at the time. And we became Tress. We became one of the cannabis industry's go-to sources for private capital and solutions and strategic support, both for investors and for the entrepreneurs themselves. Today, in 2020, we have 9 industry leaders, as I mentioned, in the portfolio. SC Labs, again, Headset, Tilt, Cannabis Now, Grownetics, Northbud Farms, Infusion Biosciences, Waste Tracker, ICANN. And our diversification strategy has proven successful, right? In 2020, during these rocky times, it's nice, right? Sure, cannabis is an essential business. However, listing our portfolio companies, our media company, Cannabis Now, prints magazines, and excuse me, and widely distributed in Barnes & Noble, Hudson News, at every airport. And sure enough, right, due to the quarantine and flights being down, there was absolutely no reason to continue printing a magazine. And unfortunately, we have a Cannabis Now CBD wellness store in Los Angeles that we opened about a year ago. And on May 30th, the first day of the protests for George Floyd, unfortunately, there were some rioters at the tail end of that, as everybody's well aware of. And unfortunately, we fell victim to some of those rioters, and our store was looted on the 30th. And so we're having to help them pivot to e-commerce and licensing opportunities, and to actually start better monetizing the 4 million plus social media followers that they have. We also made an investment in international live networking trade show event that I'm sure many of our international audience is aware of, called Canatech. And I would have never have guessed at our last gathering in Cape Town in South Africa in November that we wouldn't be reconnecting with the international cannabis community come April in Tel Aviv. But sure enough, COVID hit us, and Canatech has also had to pivot to an all digital platform. That said, I am very optimistic. Okay, there are distressed opportunities we are seeing all the time in cannabis today, with valuations that were really unheard of 6 to 12 months ago. We're also seeing great companies begin to mature, learning to scale efficiently, reaching profitability or getting close to it. And there are some really great growth equity opportunities to invest in today. A nice bonus to cannabis investing is that while investors are waiting for our outsized financial returns, our investments can have a measurable impact today. For impact investors, this is a very exciting industry to be part of right now. And I want to finish by encouraging the investors and the entrepreneurs on today's webinar, Seeking Capital, to do your diligence on one another. Make sure you are the right fit for each other. Make sure you're going to investors that invest in you and that are not going to leave you when times get tough. If you're raising capital and don't have access to that network of active cannabis investors, please reach out to us or to some of the investors that you find on the webinar today. We can help. If you are an investor, now more than ever is the time to link up with other investors who specialize in the cannabis industry and co-invest with us in an SPV. That's fine, but don't go at it alone. And again, as you mentioned earlier, Tress Solutions provides M&A advisory, strategy, business development, and other operational support. You can find my information and all of Tress's information on our website at tresscapital.com, or if you're an entrepreneur in the space and seek advisory or strategy, biz dev, go to Tress, TRESS and Tress Solutions will be able to assist. And of course, you can go directly to the Cannabis Investing Forum's site and find all of our information as well. So again, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to all the entrepreneurs. Thank you all to the investors for really making my dream a reality of a cannabis economy, of a cannabis industry where kids and adults can benefit from cannabis. Thank you, Jim.